I don't usually get the opportunity to speak about Parshas Vayeshev and Chanukah together. I mean, once in a while there are two Shabbos of Chanukah. There's Shabbos Parshas Vayeshev, Shabbos Parshas Miketz. Generally speaking, Shabbos Chanukah is Parshas Miketz. Every once in a while, like this year, you get a little bit of an anomaly of the calendar, and there's only one Shabbos Chanukah, which happens to be Parshas Vayeshev. So it's on the rare end. So we'll try to take an opportunity a little bit to say something that both touches on the Parsha as well as in Yom Yom in terms of being, of course, today being the first day of Chanukah. If you look throughout Parshas Vayeshev, so you get the impression that Yosef has everything going against him. Whatever can go wrong does go wrong, whether in terms of his dealings with his brothers, whether in terms of when he initially comes to the house of Potiphar. And every time that Yosef seems to be kind of turning the corner and things seem to be getting better, all of a sudden things look worse again. And really an amazing characteristic, amazing quality of Yosef HaTzadik is his optimism, is his ability somehow to look to the future and to be able to realize that even though things right now don't necessarily look very good, no doubt as he's in the pit thinking that his life's about to come to an end, no doubt as he's on his way being sold as a slave to Mitzrayim, no doubt as he's accused falsely in the house of Potiphar, each and every time, perhaps somebody not as optimistic as Yosef would have just literally thrown the towel, just given up. After all, everything is going wrong. And yet Yosef perseveres, and Yosef is the eternal optimist. What is it about Yosef that gives him that ability to be so optimistic, to be able to look at something which would bring other people to such deep despair? The Torah tells us that Ba'asher Hashem Nito, the Torah tells us that anyone who interacted with Yosef realized right away that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with him. Shem Shemayim Shagu B'fiv, that Yosef spoke about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yosef thought about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yosef felt HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. And it was that ability to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu with him, no matter where and when, that ultimately gave him that tremendous optimism in life. Because if a person really, truly believes in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is above time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is high over year, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not bound by the limits of time, and from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's vantage point, even though things are quote-unquote not good right now, so everything is ultimately going to be for good. Well, the more that a person is in sync with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more that a person Hashem Shemayim Shach B'fiv, so they will be able to look to the future, not get caught up in what seems to be a very, very dark present, be able to look to the possibility of a glowing future. And it was Dafka because Yosef was Ba'asher Hashem Nito, he was able to look to the future, able to see that there is a light, there is something to look forward to at the end. And of course, that notion of a light in darkness, of course, is a major motif, a major theme, the celebration of Hanukkah. The Hanukkah, as we know, comes at a time of the year when things are cold, things are dark. It is the shortest days of the year, the winter days, when the beginning of the real cold of the winter is setting in. And it's a time when a person would otherwise feel very down and full of despair. And yet comes a little light of Hanukkah and tells us that just as in the darkness of all the Gezeiros of the Yevanim, when things looked like there was no hope, all of a sudden the world turned around, and all of a sudden, that there was a new light, there was a whole revealing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory of his Ashras HaShechina. The Ashras HaShechina of the menorah is the Ba'asher Hashem Nito of Yosef. A person realizes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, so then there is no room for any despair. And this notion that sometimes when things look very, very difficult, and we're experiencing both as individuals and as a tzibur and as a world, very difficult times, so that notion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu dropping us a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a light, a little bit of a mashu of optimism in the air is something which is very, very powerful. I think there is no coincidences in the world, and anyone who is following the news and listening, so even from a not from source and not Jewish radio station. I don't remember whether it was CBS or INS, one of the two news stations that I listened to. But one of the reporters had a comment yesterday as I was literally just coming home about to light the menorah, when they were commenting upon, on the one hand, how the situation is so dire and so difficult, and there's so much sadness in the world today. And nevertheless, all eyes are glued on the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hopefully being Meir and Einu to be able to find a little bit of a way for us to finally get out of some of this darkness. And as all eyes were glued and listening to the report, are the vaccines going to begin? Is the what appears to be, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of presenting the Yeshua actually going to take place? So the reporter on the news said, literally this phrase, he said that in the midst of the great darkness, there was a little bit of a ray of light as I literally pulled into my driveway about to light my Hanukkah candles. And I think that really says it for all of us, the way we all feel now, is that the light of Hanukkah, and a little bit of light, a little bit of optimism in the world. So we hope and pray that that light will go a long, long way in terms of being ultimately the light to our Chodesh Hatzion Toya. So as we and our Torah, try to be mechazik ourselves, and we've joined together and spoke together on so many different occasions over the last several months, and there is still a lot of very, very much so, a lot of tension, a lot of uncertainty in the air, and we all sense that these are still very, very difficult times ahead. Nevertheless, a little bit of optimism, a little bit of light, a little bit of looking to the future that we hope and pray should be very, very soon. I think no pun intended, but in that light, I think it's important for us to focus, as we spoke about many times, about the role that the shul plays in our lives at a time of Mizmor Chanukah Sabayis Nadav, at a time of Chanukah Sabayis, Chanukah Hamikdash, and we realize just how integral the shul has been and continues to be in our lives, and how so important it is for us to be able to have the shul playing that pivotal part in our lives. That we look to the future, B'nai Hashem, and we hope and pray that we'll be zocha very, very soon to be able to go back to some of our plans that are temporarily put on hold in terms of expanding our shul and building our shul and making it into the great Makom Torah and Tefillah. We want to see it grow. So this is an unofficial Hanukkah appeal, an unofficial campaign, but just everybody should keep in mind that B'nai Hashem, as we look to the future, so begin to think in terms of practical ways of planting some of those seeds and being able to enable some of those dreams that we hope and pray to be able to begin in a real practical sense, that we plant those seeds now. So wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos and a Ferech Hanukkah. We should only be zochet to Yeshuos, both Yeshuos in the near future in terms of this particular tzara, and should be a beginning of great, great Yeshuos for us and for the entire world. So Kadosh Baruch Hu should make this truly a time of our Chodesh Hatzion Toher.